Hello, everyone. Welcome to lesson 3.3, and we are going to discuss clean architecture and Riverpod. In the last lesson, I introduced something to you, a new concept called clean architecture. And as I explained, that clean architecture is perhaps the most important secret of this course. The next most important is working with Riverpod. What is Riverpod? Now, what is Riverpod? Riverpod is basically a state management library. But if you remember, if you worked in the second module and created the counter app, or if you generally looked at this sample app, you remember that there is a thing called state and there's a thing called set state. So basically, we manage state with set state. And for example, in our counter app, our state is in the counter variable, which we manipulate in the setState function. We can also use Riverpod to manage state, and actually, we should use. Now, quickly, what actually is Riverpod? It's a modern and flexible state management library which keeps logic outside of widgets. So, what do I mean by that? Let's look at this. So this is our stateful widget, as you can see, and this is our state. And our stateful widget has the state inside the widget. Because we have the state in the widget, it's also the actual state is already in the widget. But for bigger projects, that is not what you should do. That is why we need to use Riverpod. Now, in clean architecture, which I explained to you, and do not worry, I will be showing you examples for all of these and you will understand it completely. But just know that in clean architecture, which we studied last lecture, we found out that there are three layers: the presentation layer, UI, and state logic, the domain layer, which has business rules and use cases, and the data layer, the database, storage, talking to the backend, talking to the servers. State belongs to the presentation layer. So, back to our counter example, you can see in our counter example, the state is in the presentation layer, and our presentation layer is the widget. In our stateful widget, we have our state, and we also have the presentation. Presentation means scaffold, app bar, center, and column. But they should not be together in one file, in one function. They should be separated. State and presentation should be separate so we can manage our projects better. Why use Riverpod? Riverpod keeps logic separate from UI. It's fully testable. It is extremely testable, in fact, I would say. And if you have a bigger app, it scales well. It works perfectly with clean architecture, but this is the golden rule: works best with AI. So, most of the projects in the wild, on GitHub, on Stack Overflow, in other places, are mostly working with clean architecture. And that is what AI works best with. But also, a lot of those projects use Riverpod for state. So AI by default works best with Riverpod. And that is why we need to learn the skills that AI works best with. Let's say if AI were working best with set state functions, then we will work with set state. And AI does understand set state. But AI works best with clean architecture and Riverpod. That is why we have to learn these two things. So, for this course, this is the other golden secret that I'm giving you. Riverpod is the recommended tool for state management. Now, there are some other tools for state management, and you might ask, why am I not using those? Well, honestly, Riverpod is the easiest to learn and it's the best for AI. If you have a huge very big project, then perhaps you should not do it. But for almost all reasons, you should always work with Riverpod. And one of the best things about Riverpod is as you keep working with AI and Riverpod, you will get better at understanding clean architecture and Riverpod. So now I would like to show you an example of clean architecture and Riverpod with our counter app. How do we do that? So let's select all of our counter app and copy it. And then let's open our AI models. So we have a new chat, copy our code, and let's ask the AI to convert our counter app into clean architecture with Riverpod. So we say, convert this app to clean architecture with Riverpod for state management and create a folder structure with 3 layers: domain, data, and presentation. And that's it. Meanwhile, let's go back to our Visual Studio Code and let's start our simulator. Let me resize everything and let's run our counter app currently. This is the default counter app with all the comments removed. You can see it works. Let's go back to GPT and see what it did. Here, gave us a folder structure. So let's create this folder structure in VS Code. So we have a main dot dart, and below it we have core, providers, domain, data, and presentation. Let's create these folders. So we have all these folders. Next, let's create these new files. So we copy this domain layer and we create a new file in the domain folder. And let's copy this code. So now I'm going to copy and create all of these files and I will return in a second. But you don't need to do that because this is just a lecture. So just wait. So I have returned now. I have copied all of this code and I have created all these files. There are new files and folders everywhere. And the AI, as you can see, gave me step-by-step instructions how to do that. Now, let's try to run it. And we see there are errors in our project. So let's go back to the AI and ask it, there are errors in the project. I fix. Add dependencies. So how do we add dependencies? We need to add dependencies in our pubspec.yaml file. So let's go back to our Explorer tab, and here, right at the bottom, we see pubspec.yaml. Open this and add a dependency. Our dependency is Flutter Riverpod or the latest version. Now, This says get flutter pub get, but there's an other way to get dependencies, and I will show you that. So open pub.dev and I search for Flutter Riverpod. Here it is. I install, copy this command, go back to our VS Code and run it. And now we got Flutter Riverpod library in our project. Confirm it, let's go to pubspec.yaml and there we see Flutter Riverpod is now added. Now, let's run this project. You can see that we have no errors right now. Let's run it. Let's wait for a second. And you see we have our counter app. But this time, our main looks much different than before. In fact, we have so many different pages here. We have so many different folders here. You might think this is very complicated. For example, this is our home page now. Not all in one page like it was before. We have separate things. We have a domain, entities, all this stuff. Now you might think, why do all of this? Why do all of this? Why not just create and write code how we were doing it before? Perhaps if you saw the second module, you might be thinking, why not do it like that? Well, the answer is that is spaghetti code. And that code is difficult for the AI to work with. Remember, we are going to offload most of our work to the AI. We are not going to build each and every line of code. We're not going to write all of it. The AI will do that. So I just want to show you really quickly. You see how many these lines of codes are, right? These are at least 100 lines of code. We did not write all of that. This was all generated by AI, and that is our goal. Our goal is to create code that runs smoothly, and AI does most of it, so we do the fun, creative stuff. And that is the solution that I'm giving you. Riverpod for state management and clean architecture. Now, as you get better at it, you can also ask AI more questions. For example, let's look at some of the code. Let's look at counter provider. You can actually ask the AI, what does the counter provider do? Explain in short. So it will give you a short summary, short way to understand it. You can even ask it for, give me another example similar to this. And so we have it, another example. This one toggles dark mode on or off. We're not going to implement that right now, but you can see that it generated all this code for us. Now, in the future modules, we are going to create our own apps. We are going to do that. But let's start working. Let's start writing our first app so that you have a complete idea of it. In the next lesson, we are going to start work on our new app. And do not worry if you do not understand this, because you do not have to. You do not have to have the deep down knowledge of Flutter. You just need to know how to work with AI and let AI handle all the problems. So, see you in the next lesson, and goodbye.